We just got an email this week from a customer, and they're saying, oh no, my email's been hacked. Well, what does that mean? Was it really hacked? We're going to talk right now about email spoofing, which is a very big deal. Hello, everybody. I'm Craig Peterson, your cybersecurity strategist, all-around technology guy. Email spoofing's been a problem for, well, a long time, really, since the 1970s. I remember when I got my first spoof email back in the 80s, and it was really a little bit confusing. I went into it in more detail, of course, being a very technical kind of guy, and looked behind the curtains, figured out what was going on, and just shook my head. I marveled at some people. Why would you do this sort of thing? Well, the whole idea behind email spoofing is for you to receive an email that looks like it's from someone that it's not. Now, you've all seen examples of this. Everybody has. Those emails that are supposedly from the bank or maybe from Amazon or some other type of business or family friend. This is part of what we call social engineering, where the bad guys are using a little bit about what they know about you or maybe another person in order to, well, frankly, fool you. That's what spoofing really is. There were a lot of email accounts that were hacked over the last, 30, 40 years. And you might remember this people sending out an email saying, oh, my account got hacked, because you just got emails from them. Back in the day, what people were trying to do is break into people's email accounts, and then the bad guys, after having broken in, now knew everybody that was in the contact list from the account that was just broken into. Now they know, hey, listen, this person sends some email, maybe I can just pretend I'm them. Now, nowadays, the same thing still happens, but now typically what you're seeing is a more directed attack. So a person might even look in that email account that they've broken into and poke around a little bit and find out, oh, okay, so this person's account I just broke into is a purchasing manager at a big company. So then they take the next step, or maybe the step after that, and try and figure out, okay, so now what do I do? Oh, okay. So really what I can do now is send fake purchase orders or send fake requests for money. I've seen in the past with clients that we've picked up because the email was acting strangely, where a bad guy went ahead, found invoices that have been sent out by the purchasing person, and sent the invoices out and changed the pay to information on the invoice. So they took the PDFs that they found on the file server of the invoices, went in and changed the account that they wanted the funds ACH'd into, and once they had that happen, they just sent the invoice out again saying, overdue. Off it goes in the email, and the company receives it and says, oh, okay, well, need to pay this invoice. Now, sometimes they mark them overdue. Sometimes they didn't mark them overdue. I've seen both cases. And now the money gets sent off, and that invoice gets paid, and it gets paid to the wrong person. Or maybe they go ahead and they don't send the invoice out, but they just send a little notification saying, hey, our account has changed. Make sure you direct all future payments to this account instead. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a second here now. They send this email out. It's going to go into a bank account. I can recover the money. Well, no, you can't, because what they're doing is they are using mules. Now, you've heard of mules before. You might have even seen that recent Clint Eastwood movie. I think it was called Mule. But typically when we think of mules as people, we're thinking about people who are running drugs. Well, in this case, the bad guys use mules in order to move money around. Now, sometimes people know what they're doing. The FBI's had some really great arrests of some people who were doing this, particularly out in California. some of them claimed, yeah, I didn't know what was happening. It's just somebody, asked me to send money. It's kind of like the Nigerian scam, where in the Nigerian scam, they say, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince, right? You've heard of these things before. And I need to get my money out of the country. I need a place to put the money. And so if you have a U.S. account, I'm going to transfer money into it. You can keep $1,000 of that $5,000 that I'm going to wire in just as a fee. Thanks for doing this. It's so important and it's such a hurry. And I'm going to send you the money. So what they'll often do is send you a money order. It could be a bank check. It could be a lot of things. And then you go ahead and you cash it. Oh, okay. It would cash just fine. And then you wire the $4,000 off to the bad guy. The bad guy gets the money and is off and running. In the meantime, your bank is trying to clear that bank check or that money order. And they find out that there is no money there because, frankly, what might have happened. This is one I've seen. I'm telling you about a story. We helped to solve this problem, but they had taken out a real money order from a bank, and then they made copies of it, basically. They just forged it. And so they forged 100 copies of it. So people thought they were getting a legitimate money order, and in some cases, the banks where the money order was being deposited did confirm it. They called up the source bank. Oh, yeah, that's a legit money order. And then they all hit within a week or two. And now you are left holding the bag. So that's one thing that happens. But typically with these mules, the money comes to them in that account. They are supposed to then take that money and put it in their PayPal account and send it off to the next person. And it might jump through 2 or 3 different people, and then it ends up overseas. And the bad guys have gotten so good at this and have the cooperation of some small countries, sometimes bigger countries, that they actually own the bank overseas that the money ultimately gets transferred into. And of course, there's no way to get the money back. It's a real problem. So with spoofing, they're trying to trick you into believing the email is from someone that you know or someone that you can trust, or as I said, maybe a business partner of some sort. In most cases, it's some sort of a colleague, a vendor, or a trusted brand. And so they exploit the trust that you have, and they ask you to do something or divulge information. They'll try and get you to do something. So there's more complex attacks like the ones that I just explained here that are going after financial employees. There might be an accountant, a bookkeeper, a bill payer, receivables, payables. I've seen CFO attacks, but the spoofed email message looks legitimate on the surface. They'll use the legitimate logo of the company that they're trying to pretend that they're from. For instance, PayPal, phishing attack, they have a spoofed email sender. And typical email clients, like you might be using, for instance, a Microsoft Outlook, the sender address is shown on the message, but most of the time nowadays, the mail clients hide the actual email address, or if you just glance at it, it looks legitimate. You've seen those before, these forged email headers. Well, yeah, it gets to be a problem. Now, we use some software from Cisco that we buy. You have to buy, I think it's 1,000 licenses at a time, but there's some others out there. Cisco, again, by far the best. And the software receives the email. So before it even ends up in the Exchange server or somewhere else online, that email then goes through that Cisco server. They are comparing it to billions of other emails that they've seen, including in real time emails that are happening right now. And they'll look at the header of the email message. You can do that as well with any email client. You can look at the header. Microsoft in Outlook calls it view source. But if you look at the email header, you'll see received headers that are in there. So say received : from, and it'll give a name of a domain. And then you'll see another received header, and it'll give another name of a machine, and it'll include the IP address, might be IPv4 or v6, and you can then follow it all the way through. So what'll happen is partway through, you'll see it took a hop that is definitely not legitimate. That's where it comes in. Nowadays, if you have an email address for your business, a domain, you need to be publishing what are called SPF records. And those SPF records are looked at, they're compared to make sure that the email is properly signed and is from the correct sender. There's SPF records, there's some others too that you should have in place. But you'll see that in the headers if you're looking in the headers. So it gets pretty complicated. The SPF, which is the Sender Policy Framework, is a security protocol standard. It's been around now for almost a decade. It's working in conjunction with what are called domain-based message authentication, reporting and conformance headers, DMARC headers to stop malware and phishing attacks, and they are very good if you use them properly. But unfortunately, when I look, I would say still 95% of emails that are being sent by businesses are not using this email spoofing and protection. So have a look at that, and I can send you a couple articles on it if you're interested. CraigPeterson.com. So we've established that email spoofing happens. What are the stats to this, and how can you further protect yourself from email spoofing, particularly if you're not the technical type controlling DNS records? That's what's up right now. You know, there's so much going on in the cybersecurity world. It affects all of us now. I think back to the good old days 40 years ago, where we weren't worried about a lot of this stuff, spoofing, etc. But what we're talking about right now is 3.1 billion domain spoofing emails sent every day. That's a huge thing. More than 90% of cyber attacks start with an email message. Email spoofing and phishing have had a worldwide impact, costing probably $26 billion over the last 5 years. A couple of years ago, the FBI, this is 2019, reported that about 500,000 cyber attacks were successful. 24% of them were email-based, and the average scam tricked users out of $75,000. Yeah, so it's no wonder so many people are concerned about their email and whether or not those pieces of email are really a problem for them and anybody else out there. So a common attack that uses spoofing is CEO fraud, also known as business email compromise. So this is where the attacker is spoofing or modifying, pretending to be a certain person that they're not. They're impersonating an executive or owner, maybe of a business, and it targets people in the financial, accounting, or accounts payable departments, or even the engineering department. And that's what happened with one of our clients this week. They got a very interesting spoofed email. So even when you're smart and you're paying attention, you can be tricked. The Canadian city treasurer was tricked into transferring $100,000 from taxpayer funds. Mattel tricked into sending $3 million to an account in China. A bank in Belgium tricked into sending the attacker 70 million euro. It happens, and I have seen it personally with many businesses out there. So how do you protect yourself from email spoofing? You know, even with email security in place, there's some malicious email messages that are still going to get through to the inboxes. Now, we're able to stop better than 96% of them just based on our stats. In fact, it's very rare that one gets through. But here are some things you can do and watch out for. Whether you're an employee responsible for financial decisions, or maybe you're someone who uses personal email at work, here's some tricks here. So get your pencil ready. Number one, never click links to access a website where you're asked to log in. Always type in the official URL into your browser and authenticate on the browser. In other words, if you get an email from your bank or someone else and there's a link in there to click that says, hey, oh man, here's some real problems. We got to respond right away. Don't do that. Go to paypal.com or your bank or your vendor site. Just type it into your browser. Even though you can hover over the email link and see what it is, sometimes it can be perfectly legitimate and yet it looks weird. For instance, when I send out my emails that people subscribe to, that right there on craigpeterson.com, the links are going to come from the people that handle my email lists for me, because I send out thousands of emails at a time to people that have asked to get those emails. So I use a service, and the service is taking those links, modifying them somewhat, in fact, dramatically, and using that to make sure the delivery happened, people are opening it, and that I'm not bothering you, right? So you can kind of unsubscribe. Next step here. You can, if you want to dig in more, look at the email headers. Now, they're different for every email client. If you're using Outlook, you have to select the email basically in the left-hand side, and you're going to control-click on that email, and it'll come up, and you'll see something that says View Source. So in the Outlook world, they kind of hide it from you. If you're using a Mac and Mac Mail, all you have to do is go to up in the menu bar, the email and view header, and ta-da, there it is. I have many times in the past just left that turned on, so I'm always seeing the headers. It reminds me to keep a look at those headers. So if you look in the headers, if the email sender is, well, let me put it this way. If the person who is supposed to have sent it to you is doing headers properly, you're going to see a received SPF section of the headers. And right in there, you can look for a pass or fail response, and that'll tell you if it's legit. So in other words, let's use PayPal as an example. PayPal has these records that it publishes that say, all of our emails are going to come from this server or that server. That is it. And I do the same thing for my domains, and we do the same thing for our clients' domains. So it's something that you can really count on if you're doing it right, that this section of the headers. And that's what I was talking about earlier. If you have an email that you're sending out from your domain and you don't have those proper headers in it, there's no way to truly authenticate it. Now, I go a step further and I use GPG in order to sign most of my emails. Now, I don't do this for the trainings and other things, but direct personal emails from me will usually be cryptographically signed so you can verify that it was me that sent it. It really was. Another thing you can do is copy and paste the text, the body of that email into a search engine. Of course, I recommend DuckDuckGo in most cases. And the chances are that, frankly, they've sent it to multiple people, right? That's why I was saying our Cisco-based email filter, that's what it does, right? It looks for common portions of the body for emails that are known to be bad. Be suspicious of email from official sources like the IRS, right? They're not going to be sending you email out of the blue. Most places aren't. Obviously, don't open attachments from people that you don't know. Suspicious ones particularly. People will send PDFs that are infected. It's been a real problem. They'll send, of course, Word docs, Excel docs, etc. as well. And the more of a sense of urgency or danger that's a part of the email should really get your suspicions up, frankly, because, suggesting something bad's going to happen if you don't act quickly, that kind of gets around part of your brain, and it's kind of the fight or flight, right? Hey, I got to take care of this. I got to take care of this right away. Ah! And maybe you don't. So those are the main things that you can pay attention to in the emails. If you are a tech person and you're trying to figure this out, how can I make the emails safer for our company? You can always drop me an email as well, me@craigpeterson.com. I can send you to a couple of good sources. I'll have to put together a training as well on how to do this. But as individuals, at least from my standpoint, a lot of this is common sense. And unfortunately, the bad guys have made it so email is something we can no longer completely trust. Spoofing's a problem. As I said, we just saw it again this week. Thank goodness it was all caught and stopped. The account was not hacked. It was just a spoofed email from an account outside the organization that was hacked. CraigPeterson.com